All right. Good afternoon, everybody. It's Tuesday at 2 o'clock. So that is what Black Pittsburgh needs to know on your screen right now. I am Dr. Cheryl Hall Russell. I moderate this program every week, and I am joined by my colleagues, Miracle Jones, who is the Director of Advocacy and Policy for One Hood Media, and Dr. Jamil Bey, who is the founder and president, yeah, both of them things at UrbanKind Institute. Hey guys, how are you?
Doing good. How are you?
Good. It's so funny. When we started, we were all in one place, and week to week now, I don't know where anybody's going to be located. But it's a good thing. It means we can keep the show going regardless of whether we're in town or out of the country. Jasiri will not be with us this week. First of all, last week he and Dr. Bey ran away from the dating show. And this week, I think Jasiri is traveling. Yeah, you missed it. It was hot.
I enjoyed that show from watching it live. That was hilarious. I mean, it was a nice job. The transition when the brothers came on, that was it was a good show, a good episode.
It was a hell of a transition, was it not, Miracle?
It was. I saw Dr. Bey in the comments, and yes, Jasiri is traveling. They had a death in the family, and so they're just taking a few days off. So again, please do not reach out to them. Give them a few days. But last week was interesting. I think a lot of people. That was like the one show that everyone was hitting me up about after and be like, thank you so much. We need a part two.
Exactly. I heard the same thing. You guys doing it again. And we were afraid if you weren't on last week, we did what Black Pittsburgh Needs to Know. Basically, it was about relationships because we talk about well-being. And we just, all of us have been struggling in that area. We're like, what's going on? So that blew up. And, so we promise you we will try it again. This week, we're going to be talking about work, though. And as we talk about well-being, work is right in the center of that. And so two things after we do our first 15, we're going to bring on the Black Workers Center, and we're going to have some conversations about what that is and how they can really be helpful in getting Pittsburgh to work with living wages and good jobs. And we're going to have the Riverside Center for Innovation, who is supporting entrepreneurs. But before we jump into that, we do our normal, top of the hour. What's going on in the world, Dr. Bey? What's happening with COVID?
What's happening with COVID? Well, they said the numbers, the caseloads, they're decreasing, and more folks, but not at a good rate, are being vaccinated. Still there's not enough of a vaccine supply. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is going to be online pretty soon. And, that brings up some questions that folks are already asking about. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine has it's less efficacious than the Moderna or the Pfizer vaccine. And so what that
does that
mean
it don't work so good?
Yes, that is on paper what that means. But then there's an effectiveness rate that's slightly different. But the idea is the Johnson & Johnson is the one dose is the one dose shot that a lot of folks are, looking for. And it's the one it's more shelf stable, so it'll be more readily available at a pharmacy. You don't need the super cold. And so it becomes a question of, do you want one that's less effective, that we can get a lot of folks out, less efficacious, not less effective. See, and so what we need to do in the next couple of weeks while we're starting to think about that is understanding vaccine efficacy versus effectiveness and what all of that means. And so before we start, hooting and hollering, let's have a conversation around equity and in vaccine distributions. That's still.
Yeah, we still are having a challenge. You guys hearing me okay? My earphones are doing some weird something. I appreciate that. Anything else going on with our numbers? I know there's been a drop. We're at the lowest since November, but we still seem to be struggling on distribution. The whole country and the world right now is struggling, but for some reason, Pennsylvania seems to be struggling worse.
And there's not a good explanation for why. We're Pennsylvania, everybody had snow, and a lot of, the distribution of the vaccines were not,
even Georgia.
Right. And so that's a thing. But even before that, just to roll out the plan, and just there are so many checks in the bureaucracy that make it difficult. And it's not enough sense to get out of the way, let public health do its thing. And so that's a part of what's slowing it down. But there's not a good explanation for why Pennsylvania is doing so poorly, other than, we weren't prepared as a state with our infrastructure, our public health infrastructure. And our state legislatures is interfered with an effective public health mechanism.
All right. So what else is going on this big miracle?
I think also, in addition to everything that's happening, we have to talk about these vaccine groups that are literally making it harder for Black and Brown people to get vaccinated, because a lot of people are organizing online to really hunt down where vaccines are being dispensed, and they're actually going to different neighborhoods. So people aren't eligible. People who are eligible aren't able to get the vaccines because people are now traveling all over the Commonwealth to try, because they're not willing to wait their turn in line. They're not willing to wait for a more robust government rollout. So that's also causing a lot of confusion, and people who traditionally would have gotten the vaccine are now having to wait because they don't have access to the technology. And that's been a huge issue and barrier, especially here in Allegheny County, whether it's been for people trying to go to school, people trying to work. The lack of technical infrastructure is a huge barrier to people also getting vaccinated.
Wow. I saw somebody dressed up. Go ahead, Dr. Bay.
I said Sister Olivia Bennett from the County Council is introducing a registry idea. It hasn't caught on in the state. Basically folks can pre-register at the state. When vaccines become available, you get your number, comes up. And that hasn't happened yet. And again, this is just we don't have a forward-thinking state legislature that's about problem solving.
I mean, this thing is falling into our normal faults.
Right.
And so, there were some folks caught the other day that said they were dressed up as grannies. And I mean, literally wigs and gloves, and they were in 20s and 30s. And they signed up for shots that day were for folks over 65. And they got their first ones, and they come back for the second. So I think what we've seen since the beginning of this is either folks with money doing these boutique doctors who are providing are now with technology that are pushing themselves to the front of the line. I guess none of this is really unexpected, but it is sad that those, what else we got going this week? Dr. Bay, I know you're far away, but I know you're in the news. You've been doing some interviews and stuff around race during this Black History Month.
Well, we had a couple of good things happening. So, Lynn Hayes Freeland did a show where she had a panel of doctors, and they went out into the community and asked folks, what would you ask the doctor? Sort of, borrowing from the idea of ask a doctor the one who media does, and presented it to the panel. And, they're going to rebroadcast that nationally. CBS, they did such a nice job with that. Kudos to Lynn Hayes Freeland and the folks at, KDKA and, Dr. Lisa Isaacs, Jerome Gloucester. I'm trying to remember who else I'm forgetting. But anyway, Utebe, SCN, they did a nice job. And then Jasiri, Esther Bush, and I were on talking to Andrew Stockey. We did a follow-up on how's Pittsburgh doing, since the last time we were on that conversation, just listening in. And, Andrew's idea, basically let's listen in so that the rest of the county, rest of the viewing area can hear what's going on in Black communities, because, we're such a segregated region that a lot of folks don't, they don't know what's happening in these neighborhoods. They're not talking to folks. They don't have that exposure. And so what we were able to, we had that conversation, and, we basically updated on what has happened since the summer. What has city council done? What has the mayor done? What's the county councilor, the county executive done? What kind of progress are we making in some of these issues? And so the frustrating thing for me is when we look back and we go back to last 10 years, pick a date. And all of the things that we're talking about that are important to us, housing, home ownership, affordable housings, safe quality housing, public safety, jobs, workforce development, which we're going to be talking about today. All of the things that we care about, that we're talking about, the issues, we're not closing the gap at all. We're not doing any better. And I remember, I don't know if it was 4 or 5 years ago, a group of Black elected officials came together, the Pittsburgh elected, is it PBEOC, the Pittsburgh Black Elected Officials Coalition. And the idea was, they had a county councilor, 2 state reps, and 2 city councilmen. And they said, they went around, they did a tour of Black neighborhoods and Black communities. Listen, what are your issues? They're the same issues that I just listed. Do the kids have something to do? What's happening with education? Where's the place to play? What's the neighborhood look like? What's going on with housing? All of these issues. And they put it on the list and they said, we're going to work together across these stages of government to make it happen for you. They're going to push a Black agenda. And then then Summer Lee was elected, Austin Davis, and so the group expanded to this Black elected coalition. And so we're thinking, now we have a critical, we're starting to get a critical mass to make something happen. And so my question and the frustration with this, if this is your team, and this is the agenda, and this is what you told the people you were going to do, and now you back up, and there's a mayor election, and Mr. Peduto's running, and he's rerunning, and Ed Gainey's running.
Yeah.
And 2 of the Black elected officials, 2 of the people on the team, ran out and endorsed Bill Peduto. And so
I was puzzled by that. I must say, we're not endorsing candidates here, but I was really puzzled before they even had to, that they rushed to do that so quickly. What do you think is behind this?
So my question for those 2 Black elected officials, if this is your man, if Ed Gainey is your man and he's pushing our agenda, and you decide to be the first to go and kiss the ring of the mayor, if I were endorsing a candidate, I need to list my reasons for making that endorsement. And so all the things that we cared about, all the things that we put on that agenda, we've not closed the gap at all under Mr. Peduto. And so if you're telling your constituents in Lavelle's district and in Burgess's district that this is our man, let's not vote for Ed, let's vote for Bill, then give us the reasons why. Tell us, other than he's the right man for the job. Tell us what's happening, because I just think it's a dereliction of duty. Now, I understand I'm not going to publicly, at least in this platform, endorse a candidate, but you know where my politics are, and I'm saying,
yeah.
As a coalition of Black folks, that you showed yourself, we're working together, we're standing by, we are pushing the Black agenda, and then you just pulled a rug out from under us with no explanation. And then you want us to vote for you again. And so, Mr. Lavelle, Mr. Burgess, if I lived in your district, you owe to your people an explanation. Can you list why? Maybe there's something we don't know. Tell us why you endorse Mr. Peduto.
I think Miracle knows. You want to tell us, Miracle?
Child, I do not know, but I think that and it's not to say that every Black person has to always endorse or support the Black candidate, right? Because politics matters, worldview matters. And I think that what's very interesting is the Pittsburgh Black electeds are
a coalition.
The coalition is split. Traditionally, if a member of your coalition is running, you do endorse that coalition member. But I think a lot of folks are already on edge about how tense this local election is going to be, whether it's the school board, whether it's just like 3,000 people running for judge, and on top of that, this mayoral election. I think that, of course, they're splitting the ticket. They're making sure, that regardless of who wins, they're going to have an in the mayoral office. But what I would encourage folks to do is, if you're going to endorse folks, also have demands. Also, when you're talking to these candidates, there's hundreds of candidates, have demands, get concrete plans and ideas put on paper and endorsements and platforms to make your vote count and to make your endorsement count. I know a lot of the young Democrats of Allegheny County, the unions, a lot of people are split on the actual Allegheny County Democrat endorsement. But if you're going to start endorsing these politicians before the cutoff date, super early, there's really, in all actuality, no reason to endorse anybody until March 12th. Technically March 16th, after all the ballots have been counted and all the challenges have been mounted. But if you're going to endorse early, make sure your endorsement's working for something. We saw how important the Black endorsement is with this last presidential election, and how South Carolina basically gave us the presidency, and so we have to make sure we're organized and getting something for our votes and our endorsements.
Well, we've got plenty of platforms now, from the economic justice, Greater Pittsburgh platform. There are platforms around education there. I mean, if nothing else happened over this last 2 years, Black folks are organizing, and they're collaborating intersectionally. So there are a lot of places to get information. So, we're reducing the excuses for not understanding, what's available, and to inform yourself around a platform. And I think that's all we're asking is way ahead of time. If you went out to endorse, what is it we don't know? What is it that is going to, that Peduto has that in store that is going to change these numbers that Dr. Bay was talking about? Because right now, numbers around health, numbers around housing, numbers around employment, they're all pretty abysmal. And we all absolutely know what's going on with our schools, even though the city doesn't control education, but certainly influences it. So, one of the things that we are most concerned about is occupational segregation. That is the fact that many of the jobs that are available to Pittsburghers are low wage, low income, low benefits. And we wanted to spend some time talking about, what are the options for us in terms of improving the plight and improving livelihoods of Black Pittsburghers in terms of work. And so I am delighted that we were going to have the group on from the new Pittsburgh Black Workers Center. They're going to be joining us to talk about what that is, what their goals are, how they're organizing. And so if we could bring them in to the screen, John, that would be great, because I'm ready to have this conversation. And there they are appearing. We have Carl Redwood, who is the director. We've got Jamal Craig, who is doing the organizing, and supporting all that organizing and keeping those two straight is Renee Aldridge. Hi, guys. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
The city needs to know more. Carl, can you give us the 30 or 60-second, elevator speech on the Black Workers Center and why we need that, and what you hope, it will do for us?
Yeah, basically the Black Workers Center in Pittsburgh is part of a national movement. There are 8 other Black Workers Centers around the country. We really focused around the issue of Black folks who are really structured into low wage employment and unemployment. Those are the two things that are really increasing in our community, that are really problems that we haven't been able to deal with. And also we're working to try to deal with them in a different way than we tried to deal with employment issues, let's say in the civil rights movement, because we're in a different space today.
Okay. All right. So I know you're doing some organizing. To what end?
One thing we're trying to do, and it relates to kind of earlier conversation, we are trying to form an independent Black political assembly that will bring delegates from the various Black communities around Greater Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania together, so we can become a new force on the scene to help hold politicians accountable, and also to help push for far-reaching visionary policies that will help the majority of our people, not just the talented few, which is what most things have really focused on. Instead of focusing just on job fairs or training programs, we really have to push policies that really impact the vast majority of our families and not just a few.
Yeah. So Jamal, what has changed under COVID? I mean, what are you seeing? What have been the pressure points in the Black job market?
Well, higher unemployment, more low wage jobs. Black folk are definitely at the heart and soul of on the front lines. Doing the job, doing the work. Lots of times without protective equipment. That's why the COVID rate is what it is in certain communities. And so the most important thing to take from this is a lot of Black workers are voiceless. They don't have a voice. And they have to, in most instances, go to these jobs just to survive. We're in survival mode. And so one of the things that organizing Black workers around what Carl just mentioned is important is to show up and let folks know we have a voice, and to build that collective power at a grassroots level so that we can expand that voice. And like Carl said, get some policies in place that address these core issues that are affecting Black workers all throughout Western Pennsylvania.
Yeah, we're hearing that word power a lot, right, Dr. Bay? I mean, it looks like on every platform we've been on, we're talking about the collection of power. And Dr. Bay, what are we going to do with this power once we get it? What does that look like for workers and for the platforms you're working on?
And for a while, power dropped out of the equation. I mean, we talked about, Black power, people power in the 70s. And then, we stopped talking about power. We didn't believe that, it was just snatched from us. We didn't believe that we owned that. And so, by power, I mean, collectively, there's nothing else that anybody can do without us. And so how do we unify that? How do we use that? How do we make political demands that we're ready to back up? How do we make economic demands, social demands? And so that power comes in, organizing, unifying that voice. And we're not always going to agree. And but I respect you enough to disagree with you. And I expect, if Jamal and I are talking and I at least understand your perspective. Here's why I think about it differently. And I'm gonna just throw one more jab. Unlike the way that Burgess and Lavelle treated their constituents, let's have an honest conversation about our power. We built our power in a coalition, and then you sold it out without an explanation. And so that's what our power is: respecting each other and trusting each other. That we're on the, we don't agree all the time, but I respect you enough to know that we're working for the same good.
So there's a national thing, statistically, a lot of capitalism rests on the shoulders of Black and brown workers. We know that. But we also are the most at risk, the least paid to do the work. And now in the middle of the pandemic, the most often to get sick because we're unprotected. Carl, in your wildest dream of success for this worker center, I mean, how is it addressing all of this? These are heavy, weighty issues. 5 years out, this worker center is killing it. How are we different?
Yeah, well, we have to really organize our people. It's really a question of organization. We're not organized independently in our own interest. And what that means is on a national level, we really have to hook up with cities all across the country, because the issues here are the same issues in Cleveland, the same issues in Cincinnati, same in Houston, same in California. No matter where we go, we're talking about the same issues, and our people are getting worse. So the key thing we need a strategy on how to win for the majority of our people. And that's what we don't have. We haven't operated based on a strategy. So what we're working together with other cities on is to develop a 5-year strategy, which we call Black Power Rising 2024. And that's to bring 10% of our people together to move in a similar direction. So that's like 4 million Black people around the country. We have to organize our people, and we have to make our interests felt.
Right. And we're talking about organizing folks. Like, how are you reaching people during COVID? How are workers being able to come into the center? I know it's a newer organization, but how are you doing like the outreach during this time?
At the moment.
Go ahead, Renee. Go right ahead.
Yeah, Renee, please.
I was just saying that at the moment, no, it's because this is a new agenda. It is a new initiative. We are laying groundwork now. And one of the things we're doing to reach people, to bring them to us, and for us to connect somewhere in the middle is by hosting our events. Because one of the things that our director did tell us from the beginning was that that helps answers one of the questions that Cheryl put up. This is going to be a complete paradigm shift. We're really trying to change the narrative around the way Black people usually look at things like this, to get them spurred on to see that they are the reasons there's a need for a change. And to that end, we have events lined up that we're going to host virtually that they could participate in. We had one about a month ago with a gentleman by the name of Bill Fletcher, who's an internationally known labor organizer person involved in unions, AFL, over the years. We expect to do something over the next couple months around Women's History Month and the women who have been involved in labor movement and done some amazing things. And we hope that through the events and through developing our lists and through using various formats of ways to compile the list, reach out to people once a week if possible, and get the word to them and get them to us. Because this is indeed a time of a paradigm shift.
We got folks already in the chat saying they're willing to work. Jamal, that must be music to your ears, because I know you're the main organizer on this. But you're going to be asking some questions to help you guys decide on direction. Generally, what do you want to know from the typical Black worker that you'd be sitting down to talk to? What do you want to know about their experiences?
Well, we want to know everything about their experiences. What are they facing? So as Carl mentioned, we can put this strategy together to build the right strategy. We don't want to just get out here and say we're going to put a strategy together and that strategy not be built upon what workers are facing. So what are you facing in your workplace? What are you facing in your community? We want the whole picture so that we're, being diligent about what we're trying to build here, and to make this inclusive, because to Brother Jamil's point a second ago, we can't build something and then, on the backs of Black working people, and then cut them off from this process. So we want this to be inclusive from the start to the ending. And as we continue to organize through, a lot of the old tradition, we've got some pretty amazing, to the events that Renee just alluded to. We've got some pretty amazing blueprints to look at, examine, and make some moves with, if we can just take the time to do that, to look at those blueprints. And one of the blueprints we can look at is that of none other than A. Philip Randolph and the Pullman Porters throughout the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, which ultimately brought us the civil rights movement and the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which featured so many components to protections for Black workers. And others, but primarily we're a Black Workers Center, so that's where our focus and our interest is. And so we've got to take some time to do some education, do some training, and lay things out, be good listeners, and be inclusive, and bring folk to this table so that their experiences and their stories are shared, so that we put the right strategy together to move forward. Because if we don't do it that way, then this is a setup for failure, and none of us are definitely interested in being a part of something that's going to fail, because that's why we're here, is to address issues in a failed system that currently exists.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you listing that history. We have been talking a little bit about some of the history just here in Pittsburgh that I was really surprised by. I mean, that education, because I think it's necessary. If you're working in Walmart, you're not getting the hours that you need. You're not getting the protection that you need up front for PPE. If all this is happening, you're not feeling very powerful. So if that kind of worker comes into the Black Workers Center and they tell you what's happening, what do you tell them that they can expect? We're now 50,000 strong, and we're really focusing in on these challenges. What are they going to look at down the road? What's happened for them as a result of this group power?
I think we need to organize. The key thing is we need to organize. We need to organize in our neighborhoods. We need to organize in our workplaces. We need to come together in a much stronger formation, and we need to dream about some new kind of ways of working together. Like for example, we could set up cooperative workplaces where instead of there being a boss and they collect all the income, they get rich off of the work of the workers could be co-owners of a cooperative business, and they could share in the proceedings and the profits instead of the vast majority of profits going to one individual. We have folks here in Pittsburgh like Ujamaa Collective. There are other people looking at different cooperative kind of ways for us to work together. And we have to really explore that, because we actually have to create an alternative economy within this current capitalist system. And we already do, because there's a whole lot of people that already live in an underground economy. But we also have to create a cooperative economy that works for the vast majority of our people. And so people can kind of look at an alternative. That's the thing. A lot of people think there's no other alternative than this current system that we're in. So we have to provide real examples that people can see, and they can see how it could benefit them. But that's part of what we could see if we're successful, is we'll have some cooperative models of ownership where workers can benefit from the fruits of their labor.
And then there's the social worker contract platform, Carl, that you might want to speak to, that we are hoping to submit to our delegates at a May 8th assembly.
Go ahead, Carl. I want to hear a little bit more about that.
Large policy ideas that we can work around. Things like federal job guarantee.
We're kind of losing Carl a little bit. Your Wi-Fi must be coming in and out.
Oh no.
He's dropped off for a minute.
Can you speak to it at all? I mean, can you tell us about it?
Yeah. Just give me a half a second. I can.
Well, while you pull that information up, we have a couple of questions in the chat. And as the lead organizer, can you talk about ways that people are able to support the Workers Center, and ways that non-Black people can get involved to amplify the message and support as well?
Sure. At this point, like I said, what was just mentioned earlier, we need to hear from you. And we'll be given an email address at some point, before we conclude. But hearing from folk to, like I said, understand what those stories are. And then from us, we are just, like Renee said, getting started to where we're going to be putting out information about what we're doing and ways that people can communicate with us. And the thing about this is most people think, we're in a pretty strong, solid union city. And so most people think about collective power through the lens of a union. And this is going to be something that's different. Not to say that we're working against or competing with unions, but we're trying to be on a parallel track to ensure that Black workers stand up and stand out, and that the voices of Black workers are heard. And what that requires is for people to get involved. And one of the key things that, I just want to mention about what people need to understand about this is that we're Black folk are very culturally oriented, meaning that we gravitate around the holistic part of things and not so much around being individuals in a workplace. And that's something that I want people to understand is, let me give an example. So we have plenty of people, Black workers in Pittsburgh who are union workers that don't identify with their union. But what they do identify with is being Black. What they do identify with is the mistreatment, the discrimination that happens, but don't fully understand the structures to how to deal with that. So as we continue to build and grow and educate, one of the key things that is embedded in our organizing and our work is connecting dots to this big, enormous structure out here that seems to stand in our way and keep us buried. And so, again, the only way we can connect those dots is to hear from people, or else we're sitting here creating an agenda for people. And again, I'll say we want to create an agenda with people, for people, by people.
So Jamal, can you give us that email? We can let it scroll so people know how to reach out to you guys. I think is it info at Pittsburgh Workers Center.org, I think. Is that right?
Pittsburgh Black, PBWC, Pittsburgh Black Workers Center.
.org.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And the first part is info, right?
Yeah.
If they want information. Okay. Is that where you wanted to go?
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'll put you guys on the spot. Sorry about that.
Okay. I just want to go over the 5 points of the new social contract for workers. Number 1, the right to collective action at scale, sectorial bargaining. And I understand that to mean that, like, instead of just bargaining with, say, the McDonald's in East Liberty, bargaining for all fast food industry, period.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, freedom from arbitrary job loss. In other words, just cause. Meaning that for here in Pittsburgh for 1,000 years, Pennsylvania is an at-will state. So your employer at any point could say, this is not working out anymore, see ya. No explanation, no anything. And they tell you that when you start to work. They tell you.
Yeah.
We're gonna let you go, if it doesn't work out. Number 3, the human right to a decent job. And that speaks to a federal job guarantee that's in the conversations now with the feds. You can't find a job and the feds say, well, here's some work for you. Number 4, democracy at work, the cooperative advantage. And for me, I think that means elimination of bullying on the job by supervisors. And lastly, universal guarantees to basic needs, Medicare for all, and universal family care. Universal family care includes small children, babies, and seniors. And those are just the top 5 points of the social contract that we're hoping to engage around what we're going to present to the Black Assembly, hopefully on May 8th. And also
nice.
That also includes we encourage people to look up the 14 policy priorities of the Poor People's Campaign. And that's a whole mission towards, just essentially what is Biden going, the 14 things we want Biden to do in his first 100 days. And really look at the economic and moral work that needs to be done for Black workers.
Okay. What are you hearing, Jamil, as you listen to those 5? Are these
listening? He's really listening.
I like the forward thinking part of this. So on the one hand, we're addressing contemporary work and going back, as Carl was saying before we lost him, that the idea is that we're creating a new vision of what work is, not based on, okay, we're trying to fix these broken systems. What's the system that we want? Where's the dignity in our work? How do we get that? And this is the conversation. And so it's not addressing, what is grievance? Yes, we need to address those, but it's from a positive, let's build. And this is what I like, because this is consistent with the direction the old ways doesn't work.
Right.
We need to be looking forward.
Right.
I've been learning a lot from I think it's a working family party, or don't let me get that wrong, but I know I've been following them and doing some stuff online, and it's anything outside of the normal kind of Democratic or Republican way seems like, oh, that's so out there. But I get on there with them and I'm like, this just makes sense. It's about people eating, about people just going to work every day, being respected, feeling stable, taking care of their children. And that ain't radical. But as soon as you start talking about it, anything that doesn't sound completely capitalistic, you get this whole socialism and how terrible it is. And I'm finding it really interesting that more and more folks are saying, hell with capitalism. Y'all have been tied to this because it's working for you, but it has not worked for us as well. And so I think that has been a really interesting shift to hear people do that and not be afraid to come out and say how it has not worked great for Black folks. It has not. Some at the top who are hanging on tight, but those who are not at the top of the food chain, it means an unstable life. So what I'm hoping happens with this center is, like you said, it's a collection of voices. is a sharing of lived experiences, and it's the weaving together a platform that really becomes a force in terms of protecting Black workers. That is the division I got from Carl. Carl got me in a little bit to help with some of the organizing. I'm excited about that because I think it is due. It's overdue. So we really appreciate you guys coming on and getting us up to date on that. We're going to, every week I'll try to provide a little more information as they get their legs under them, providing information on contacts, on surveys, on the events that are going to be happening over March and April. We'll bring that information to you in this forum to make sure that you get connected. So we appreciate you. Tell Carl he's lost in the stratosphere somewhere. Hopefully he didn't get hurt when he got jerked out into the wherever. But we appreciate you guys coming in. This work is massive. Yes. And we want those people out there who are struggling and are not being treated well in this work market to know that we're organizing and that we have them forefront in our minds to reach out to and help.
One last point, Cheryl, real quick.
One last point. That's all you got. We ready to pull you out of here.
Ultimately, develop a model for the Black community. This is a model for the Black community. Organization that concentrates with grassroots people, power, fighting for social change.
There you go. Great words to end with. All right, we're going to have you guys back, obviously, again, and we really appreciate you. So we're going to take this a little bit in a little bit different direction, but we're still talking about work and power and what's more powerful to them to be able to launch your own business. And we've been working with Mr. Juan Garrett for a while now, and if we could bring him in, that would be great. He is with the Riverside Center for Innovation. Hello, Juan. How are you?
Good. How's everybody doing today?
We're all right. All right. We heard you've been hustling.
Yes, I'm hustling. I get 2 hours of sleep. Brain is moving because as I was listening to the previous panelists, and it's key and important that we all work in collaborative because there is an intersection between Black entrepreneurship and Black worker. So that we need to make sure that we're educating our companies that if we're going to hire people that look like us, make sure you're hiring them for the right thing. Pay our people, pay them livable wages, and pay them benefits, and being able to understand that. But being able to do that, we have to create tools that can make people that can help pay them. How do we make them get contracts? And what is the right funding mechanisms that need to be put in place as other businesses that are out there? So yes, we're working hard.
For those of the folks who don't know what the Riverside Center for Innovation is, Juan, give them a quick, 30-second kind of brief and tell me a little bit about the growth. You were telling me that you guys are kind of exploding right now.
Yes. So Riverside Center for Innovation, we're probably one of the oldest incubators here within the city of Pittsburgh. We've been around since the early 1990s with a focus on the Black entrepreneurs. We came out of the gate with that, thinking that if we had a facility that's nice for Black people to come and work, they would roll up their sleeves and go and work. And so that seems to be a model to do that. And in recent years, we had an opportunity to merge with another nonprofit. And since that merger, we have really stepped up our game in the last year since COVID. As a result of COVID and the right programming and being able to listen to what individuals need, we've doubled the number of folks that are in our database in 1 year. We went over,
wow,
well over 400 minority entrepreneurs from low-income communities. Again, these are people who are just lost their jobs and said, I need to do something for myself and for my family to build the livelihoods behind that. And we want to be the resources that's giving them the tools to get to that next level. How do we find those companies that'll scale and shift the culture to be bold here in Pittsburgh? I'm on conversations where people are saying reimagining being bold. I'm reimagining being bold. I want to create loan funds that don't require credit scores because those are just barriers. Those are redlining practices that have been going on just because of a zip code. And that algorithm tells me just because I live in a 208 zip code that a restaurant won't work there. But if I'm selling oxtails to the people that I'm catering to, I'm going to be more successful than anything that's up in Mount Washington. So it does.
There you go.
So these are the things that we got to shift and educate people on. And it's a fight, but we're going to continue this fight. And again, we want to be bold and reimagine what it'll look like. What would it look like walking out the front of your door in an African-American neighborhood of choice? Black people that's working, our own main business districts, and just having the things that we should have. And we should have, and the system's been broken for decades. How do we partner and collaborate with other people? And it's a whole ecosystem that needs to be built. Housing is tied to it. Public safety is tied to it. The environment is tied to it. Not only entrepreneurship, but we all got to be in one room together and collectively talking about how do we change the ecosystem and be bold for our region. So I appreciate the conversation that Carl and his group are doing with the Black Workers Center. I think that's exciting, something new and bold, and we need that.
Yeah, I mean, some of this is going back to what we knew before. I mean, one thing about segregation and oppression, it makes us creative. And when you said you went from 200 talking about, because sometimes you have to get independent, and I mean taxpayers.
Uh-oh. It seems like we may have lost Dr. Cheryl for a moment. But
there she
is.
And she's back. It's so weird. But I will let you guys respond to what's happening in case I go down again. I don't know what just happened. But,
yeah, we changed the conversation. We were talking about his oxtail recipe.
Hey, I got it.
And it's karaoke.
That's how
but that's the idea, and that's consistent with what Carl, what the Workers Center is talking about. And what you just said, we get creative. Folks didn't eat oxtail, but we took it, flipped it. Oh, now that's a delicacy.
It's a delicacy, right?
Right, and damn if you ain't going to be successful selling oxtail soup, oxtail in the hood.
Right. Right. And so that's what we're trying to do. We identified our caterers, and we have a caterer that specializes in oxtails. And we're telling them,
wow,
be the prime thing that you're telling people, because we can't get oxtails. And again, like you said, Dr. Bay, it's a specialty. So when we're talking about that, it's a specialty, and where are you going to be located at? And we're trying to make sure you're located in an African-American neighborhood of choice, because that's where your market is. And just because those algorithms say it might be in 208, 206, 214, wherever, that doesn't mean that business isn't going to thrive. And so being able to be to create your own funds and figuring those things out. One of the other things we're trying to really work on is really how do we accelerate a lot of the minority firms that are out here. We got a lot of minority-owned entrepreneurs who were in Fortune 500 companies. They left those companies because they didn't have the power, as we were talking about, the change to be able to do it. When they walk into the room, because they have a different skin color, people automatically think that they're not qualified to do that. But when you find out that they were vice presidents of big corporations, but now they started their own, nothing has changed. It's the fact that they're the owner of the business. But how do we make that? How do we make people feel comfortable, and how do we accelerate them? What are those tools that we need to make sure we put in place? So that's some of the things that we're working on as a long-term strategy, is to really get companies to that next level, to create jobs that look like us. And who needs to be sitting at the table? And like you said, Dr. Bay, you don't have to agree with everything we're saying, but let's have the conversation about it, because that's when you come up with the best solutions. Anytime everybody that leaves out of the room and they both feel screwed, it's probably a good deal.
I don't know about that, but I get your point.
I have a few questions. Outside, you talk about the algorithm that's the barrier to raising capital. And we saw in this past, cycles with the PPE loans, it's been around like 1% of those loans have gone to like African-American businesses. So what other barriers are you seeing that are directly impacting Black entrepreneurs? And what are some of the resources that are available to individuals so that they can overcome some of these barriers?
Sure. One of the biggest one is how do we access contracts? How do we access contracts with corporations, with government agencies that think outside the box than the way that we used to? There's companies that are out here that are right here located in our region, but sometimes people feel more comfortable going outside the region and bringing somebody in here to do the work. So how do we go in now and do studies and saying, okay, corporation, this is what your spend is, and this is what the cluster is. If we're able to find, what is your commitment to being able to find a firm locally who happens to be African American? Are you willing to put that contract in their hands? And so being able to think really outside the box. So when we talk about doing studies and disparity studies, nobody wants to do a disparity study in our region because it's saying we're going to change our goals and outcomes. No, that's not necessary. It could also identify those clusters on where organizations like RCI and the other support organizations saying, wait a minute, we need to create an office supply company that can feed paper to one of these legal firms that are out there, because they use paper all the time. So can you imagine what a paper contract is with a legal firm if a minority just supplied just paper? And so we got to be able to figure out ways to open the doors up to have that kind of conversation. We're not trying to get into anybody's books and shame anybody. We're just trying to identify where the spend is and how we can create those companies for those opportunities, or introduce you to companies that you don't have an idea that is here, that we know who they are.
How do we break the Amazon thinking? Because every time when you're working with procurement people, the first thing they want to do is, bulk, big, go to the massive. How do you get people to understand that buying local by supporting local entrepreneurs is what's going to drive your local economy?
We're having this conversation right now at a board level, and one of them is, what is the change theory that's going to be behind RCI being able to take that role? That's why it's important to sit here. We have companies that started in our bizfit entrepreneurial training program 2 years ago, and the quote from one of them, bizfit is out here making us millionaires. And I stepped back and said, now I know what revenues are, and I know what some of our bizfit companies are doing, and they are making millionaires. But the change thing that happened, the change shifted their livelihoods. They've gone out now and started buying homes. Some are putting succession plans in place for their families to carry this on with their kids and get them enrolled and educating them about businesses. That's something that we haven't had. So these are some of the things that we want to make sure. What is the change theory behind RCI's programming and entrepreneur? What's that do to public safety? What's that do to affordable housing? What's that do to really demanding the new energy things that are going to be out there? Why are we not creating passive development housing in our communities if the utilities are going to be much more affordable for seniors in our neighborhood? So we're trying to educate our companies. Let's take these tools and put them in our communities, because we got to take that initiative to do that. We can't wait on other people to do it. We got to figure out a way to do it ourselves.
Well, let me jump in before you get too far away from this point. Because there's the flip side of the local business. Local entrepreneurs, there are a lot of international corporations now that are saying, they're publicly committed to supporting specifically Black businesses. I know Microsoft has a specific commitment. They put it in paper. Make them own up to it. Don't hide. Make yourself available. BlackRock, a couple of large corporations have said, in the last year, and result, after the that they're going to do their part to break some of these cycles. And so make yourself available. Go after those big contracts too.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do. Some of that is not just check the box, because we got the heads of the corporation saying, right, does it filter down to the decision maker? So does it have to come from the bottom to the top up? And then we got to find out what those challenges are within corporations, the things that were made years ago. For instance, there's some local organizations because, they made arrangement with the unions. And so when they're saying, to do any kind of repair work, it has to be a signatory union shop. And as we know, we don't have a lot of minority firms that's there. So that barrier, you can say, I'm going to do all the work with these companies, but if you backdoor deals and we can't change that, that's just checking the box. But how do we hold you accountable, and how do you change those? Or how bold are you now to go in when we come to you and say, you know, this is an issue? How are you going to change that? If you really want to say and be accountable to that. So with us being in the neighborhood, but again, you know, I was struggling with that. And so I reached out to the unions. I know the guys, you know, they literally are sitting there working with us. You know, yeah, we can't shift the change here as an industry if we don't have everybody at the table. So again, paying good payable wages, as Carl and we're saying, protect our people. We need to be able to make sure that these are the things that we represent for the workers and along with our entrepreneurs as well.
I just think we're at this point of reckoning in this last year. A lot of this money has been, you know, here's the money, like Dr. Bay said, you know, Google, all these folks. I work in the DEI field, you know, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm working with corporations and nonprofits. And, you know, I got all kind of calls to do the work. And, you know, some of them are really doing it. But when it gets down to culturally shifting how you do the work, who you include in it, that's a lot harder nut to crack. Because we get really dependent on what we've always done. And it's not even that folks don't want to see it different, but they're just kind of expecting somebody else to be the ones that do it and see if it's successful. I mean, if you really think you're taking that bigger risk by getting somebody else to paint for your building or to, you know, there are multiple things. What are the areas most often in terms of entrepreneurs? What are you seeing most often that people are wanting to really get into? And what are those opportunities, Juan?
Well, right now, we help them match and do the market research. Right now, as we're talking about economic recovery and knowing what's going to come out of DC, typically economic recovery starts with infrastructure and construction projects. And so we need to be geared up to make sure our companies know that you need to have your OSHA training. What insurance requirements are you going to have? What does your balance sheets look like? So when people went to go get the PPP loans, you know, we all did this. Ran out, let's get, and people were getting them. People were resilient enough to know how to navigate through that system and all the different rounds. Now they got them. If those loans weren't forgiven, you know, those loans now show up on your bank statement or your balance sheet.
Whoa.
So what happens is you went out there to save your business, but when you go and get financing for something else, the lending institutions are still supposedly looking at it as a loan. They're not looking at it any kind of special way to say, oh, this was a special COVID relief. What would my balance sheet look like that if it wasn't here? And by being able to use that as another barrier on their balance sheet, who knows what that's going to present to our companies. So that's why we're saying we need to create our own funds, because that could be the conversation. We don't know, but how do we create those types of funds and special programs that we need to make sure that our companies are able to qualify for that and access it the right way? Why they created the PPP loans to get to the people that needed it the most, and that didn't happen. So now who should be held accountable for that? You know, nobody's talking about who's held accountable for it. They got the money, sure, they turned it back in, but you know, that just is a turn off for anybody that went through that process. But somebody should be held accountable for that.
Yeah, I'm really surprised about. I mean, I was afraid of that situation about having those loans on the books, because they kept talking about you be able to write those off quickly. But in the interim, it's causing some challenges. I'm not either discouraging or encouraging one way or the other as new money becomes available. But we really need folks like you to help people think about long-term impact of taking those kind of things on.
Yeah, because a lot of people ran out and got the loan, and you know you got reimbursed for your employees. But to be honest, a lot of our companies are 1099 contractors, so they're not employees. Now I'm stuck with that on my book, not understanding what it was the prior to. But now how do we put programs? Even there's organizations that are out there now that's trying to think about it. Maybe they're public agencies that's saying, hey, let's refinance that out and set interest rates over a longer period of time than what's out there. So maybe we can create and refer people to that to help clean up cash flow as the second piece on looking at financing to grow their business.
Yeah. Miracle, are folks, you know, running out to start some businesses? Have you been talking to your folks in your generation who are like, you going solo? Bug this.
Yeah, and I think also part of the issue is the education, because most people I know have always been entrepreneurs, whether it's people selling food plates out the house, people selling outfits, you know, people doing hair, all these type of things. But there's always been a barrier to getting the paperwork done. And I think part of COVID was that people had to do this, engage this underground economy in order to survive, whether it was going back to babysit folks and watch. We have people who are like, can I come cut the grass? You know, all these things. And so a lot of people are trying to work. A lot of people have decided that, you know, COVID-19 is a time to go out and start their dream, do the things they've always wanted to do. And so there are a lot of people my age who are going into business. A lot of my friends have opened up their own law firms, opened up their own contracting firms, just because traditional methods weren't really available to them. So this information is very necessary, but it's also every time we hear those horror stories about the books or about being denied the loans or being told, you know, you can't get support, I think it becomes an internal barrier. And so I'm very glad that Juan is out here doing this work, because it's very necessary.
Yeah. Y'all are training like crazy. Can you talk a little bit about the training, the support, the kind of stuff that Miracle's talking about? I'm in your building. I mean, at least from you. And I know, I don't care what time of day or night, you guys are doing some kind of training. And I think for one thing, it builds that confidence. You know, people are learning about, and I'm guessing, and I'll let you finish this, but I know the financial side of this, you know, what that credit actually means. We're still having to deal with that system for now. You know, the basics of setting up and surviving when it gets dark times like these. You know, what are most of your classes really focused on?
Sure, it's really trying to really educate from the basic business plan. First, you got to have a business plan. I mean, we all should have that. And even if business plans are not 60 pages, business plan can be 4 pages long. That's all it needs to be, so that it's in your head and understand what that is. And we help you get to that next level. We have free services that we offer. You register with us, and you get get to talk to top quality attorneys through our legal clinic services. We run the Kiva program, and that's where you could go in and do crowd platforming. If you need a laptop and some software and you're doing media design and you need $2,000, you know you can't go to the bank, but let's help you get a Kiva loan program to get that in. Let's talk about joint venturing. Let's connect you with other people that are like you to build the capacity. As you said, you got 2 people cutting grass over here. The next, you know, the URA might have a lawn cutting grass in this neighborhood. Let's partner the 2 or 3 up to say, okay, let's get you some equipment and cut those grass, and then flip that. When the grass is done in the wintertime, like other companies, think about snow removal services. You got seniors and things like that where you could shovel. So it's being able to have this conversation, and we build this family culture and environment with our alumni. People partner and work together. And again, they're sharing ideas. Last night's training, they got mad at us because we kept taking them out the breakout rooms too early. Man, we're getting so good in the breakouts. And we're like, well, we'll just schedule a meeting one night just to have breakout sessions if that's what you want. And since we can't be in person, but you know, again, that's the being resilient. If that's the need, we can't network in person, but hey, maybe that is what we do, you know, and identify and sharing what are the best practices and what did you learn from. We had a great workshop this morning on job descriptions. When you're hiring somebody, we got to hire and put job descriptions together, put it on paper so you know the exact person you're looking for. And it's difficult because it's hard for all of us to say no to somebody that we know that needs a job. But it's your business, and you got to treat it as a legitimate business.
There's a young man that I work with who has a really quality cleaning service. He does my house, and we started to talk about, you know, he's so professional and he had a little contract ready and all of this. But we start talking about finances. He was like not knowing how to use, you know, what kind of financial service does he need an accountant, not knowing even what QuickBooks is, and you know, and just so I see this model that he's built blood, sweat, and tears in. But you know, I'm sending him to you. To say, you know, you need to make sure you got this part of it taken care of, because IRS will more than happily shut it down. Yeah, and if you can't guess on how to deal with them. So you know, for folks, I mean, I launched 4 years ago, and I had always been, you know, I was a worker. I was working for somebody. I was getting regular benefits. And even as long as I've been in this market, it was a scary thing to do, to decide to launch my own business. And now, you know, what's the most exciting about it is that I'm bringing in partners. I'm able to now pay other people to work with me on projects. And I'm telling y'all, nothing feels better than to be able to do that. And so, you know, as we look at whether you're going to make your income by really going up the ladder in a company, you know, we strongly, if that's what you want to do, we strongly encourage it. But we also are excited that folks are thinking, maybe this is a time. Maybe this is the day. Is it going to get worse than it is now? Right now, I don't have a job at all, but I got an idea.
Right.
And this may be the best time to call an RCI. And we've been putting your information. Bernard Alexander has been busy. He's throwing up stuff right now. He got your email out there, and we've got your website out there as well. We're coming near the close. Are there certain things that you want to lastly share, Juan, about the work that you guys are doing?
Sure. And just real quick, if you go to that website, we are starting our next cohort for our training in March. So if you go online, I don't know exactly where it is, but if you join, I'm going to just say, I want to join. We reach out to you. Our staff will reach back out to you. We want to get you into those. Let's get you the skill sets you need and help you get to that next level, help you find contracts. Again, we want to be bold and change the paradigm that's been here and create a pool of successful minority. And when I'm talking about a pool, I'm talking thousands. I'm not talking a few hundred, I'm talking thousands, because that's what we need to do to really have that
power.
Yeah, to have that voice at the table to say, this is what we need. And so I think we're on our way, especially with some of the conditions we're all working with and getting on these agendas with everybody.
Yes, thank you so much. Again, we're feeding into that whole idea about power and regaining it. And this is not, you know, when we rise, sometimes people feel like they're losing, and that's all right. We ain't got to worry about them. You know, you work about us right now, and your independence. And like you said, it's a ripple effect. You're buying houses, you're shopping more, you're going to retailers. If folks need to realize that we are a part of this economy, and that we could really help to bring it up as well. And the focus has not been on us in a way that is powerful. And I love the fact that you guys are doing this work. Any wrap ups for us, Miss Miracle? What's going on with One Hood over the next week or so that people need to know?
Of course, T'Challa was always
the dog wants to answer. Yes. Oh, you're having that meeting.
T'Challa. Anyway, sorry. But yes, so this evening we are doing a program with the Allegheny County Bar Association to celebrate Black History Month. Tomorrow, is Wednesday, so this week is white supremacy. I do apologize. So
that's all right. Everybody got kids or dogs. We are being very
well,
give that dog a treat.
So this weekend, white supremacy we have going on. And then on Thursday at noon, you know, everybody's stressed out. We have On Tilt with Julius Boatwright and Miss Daniel Brown. And then to wrap up, you know, Black History Month, to engage and celebrate, we have the Next Level Slam. That's going to be Saturday at 6:00 as we talk about Black history. We're going to celebrate Black history. If you are a poet, if you are a rapper, you're an artist, you're a spoken word individual, the top prize is $250. So if you email Treble NLS, you can get you on the roster for the program. We always love exploring new talent, and it's for anyone anywhere who has a Wi-Fi connection. You can engage, apply to be one of the panelists to be in the Next Level Slam. So that's what we have coming up on our ends.
Fantastic. I'm actually going to call Treble. I told you I had a couple pieces, and I'm going to show up in the room. I'm not going to compete for the money, but you know, it was really nice just to see that banner that just went up of all of the shows that One Hood is doing. You know, the opportunity this year for One Hood and those of us who work with One Hood has been to come up with this broadening of a media platform. You know, talking to each other, sharing information that never was appearing in the broader, larger media platforms and ecosystem that we had. This ecosystem has blown up this year, and it has been critical. And a lot of folks are listening. You know, it's what Black Pittsburgh needs to know. But I know a lot of Pittsburgh is listening and hopefully learning and hopefully responding in ways because they understand who we are and what we're doing and what our needs are and how we want to work together to get them fulfilled. So we appreciate everybody who comes in. Dr. Bay, any last things that we need to know about before I draw it to a close?
Related to what you two were just saying, I mean, seeing that schedule across the screen, that's powerful. And this is consistent with what we're doing. This is redefining for us our own vision, our own future about here's our media. This is a beautiful thing to see. What I'm excited about, what's not on that schedule yet, because we're going to be working the details out, is the Black Environmental Collective is going to be hosting a regular show March 1st, next week. Alyssa Lyons starts as the director of the Black Environmental Collective. That's a powerful sister that's going to, shake that thing up.
She is.
And then, then we're going to roll out, how we're communicating on the one who would put my media platform. And so that, I'm looking forward to that.
That's really exciting. And oh man, just getting Black folks to understand that, environmentally, we need to be fully engaged. This ain't a white folks problem, y'all. A lot of the stuff that gets put in that's polluting, that's killing us are in your neighborhoods. And so we need to better understand that and bringing Alyssa Lyons in. She's fantastic. So I'm really happy to see that blowing up. All right. Yep. Well, I am not going to keep this going much further. We're a little bit over, but I appreciate all y'all. I appreciate the chats, the chat that was live today, which is awesome. Keep feeding us ideas. Criticize us if you want. We got broad shoulders, we can take it, but what we want to know is what you want to know. And we want you to help us educate and share information. So we will see you again this time live next week, Tuesday at 2 for what Black Pittsburgh needs to know. And we wish you an amazing week. All right. Peace out, everybody.